What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Salt and Pauper video. Today we're going to continue our Brothers War Pauper set review with the final color, the green cards. Joining me as usual is my friend Josh, otherwise known as Mayo on the internet. What's up, buddy? You ready to dive into these green cards and take a look?
Yeah, just about getting into green here. Super excited.
Sweet. Let's jump right in. Starting off, we have our Gorthian Opportunist, which is a 3/2 human scout for 2 and a green. It says when it enters, create a tapped power stone. This is very clearly a limited support card. It's for the critical mass of power stone support in their limited environment. The Pauper metagame as a whole and constructed doesn't have a ton that can abuse Power Stones outside of Affinity. Affinity is a Grixis color deck, and even the black Power Stone cards aren't good enough to see play there, so I don't see this having a home anywhere. It's not an incredibly defensive body. It's not an incredibly aggressive body. It's just very moderate. And when you look at this next to something like Jewel Thief, I see this going absolutely nowhere. You have any strong opinions about our opportunist here?
No defense, an apt
I
comparison.
see opportunist, and all I hear is opportunity missed because this could have been much better.
Boo.
Let's see. Our Gothian Sprite is next up. We have a green fairy that looks absolutely nothing like a fairy. It doesn't have wings. What are they doing?
The wings got blown off in the
Two
explosion.
two for a fairy for 1 and a green. It can't be blocked by artifact creatures, and it says 7 mana, put 2/1/1 counters on it. So this is parallel to the 8 mana draw 2 cards blue creature that we looked at in kind of that vein of Mana Sink. It's interesting to me that this isn't a full cycle. This is the final colored card, and we've only seen 2 of these. Very, very strange to me that they didn't make a cycle out of this, like the Invokers or, any of the things of the past where they have these big, huge Mana Sink payoffs, but they have one in every color. We only have a green and a blue one, which is strange to me, but sure. That being said, it says fairy on it, so, you have to be aware this card exists, but it's green. It's green, it doesn't have wings. This is the weirdest fairy design I've seen in a long time, and I just don't think it's very good. Doesn't
Yeah,
even have flying.
that's what I was gonna get at. it's just too big for a fairy as well.
Mm-hmm.
I got 2/2, no flying. I'm looking at this real closely, like a jeweler's lens, and you're right. It doesn't look like a fairy. There are green fairies that exist, but I mean, this is really only a fairy in name.
Yeah. I mean, it says it right in the name. Actually, it's not even a fairy in name; it's a sprite in name. It should have been a sprite.
Mhm.
All right, what do we have next? Blanchewood Prowler. Oh, the final of the mill card cycle. Let's see what it gets. It's a 1/1 for 2, which is probably the best mana cost we've seen outside of the Archaeologist. It's an elemental for a colorless and a green. It says when it enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards. You can put a land card from among the cards milled this way into your hand. If you don't, put a 1/1 counter on Blanchewood Prowler. I cannot find a compelling reason to play this over Satyr Wayfinder ever. Do you have one?
Not over Satyr Wayfinder, but instead over um, it's a black green one. It's a black green 3/1 mill 3. Put a card from your graveyard on top of your library, and that's
Ew.
strictly for mana
Is
cost.
it even playable? That doesn't sound playable at all.
I mean, if you close your eyes and you just ask
So
people,
no,
all
got
right,
it.
what do I?
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
but that's
Playable
the only card that
cards.
I can think of that's comparable to this. Not there's no
Ah.
playable comparable card here.
Sounds so it's not playable. Got it.
Yeah. I'm not. I mean, it is
Cool artwork.
elemental.
This
Got
probably looks great in
relevance.
foil.
Has relevance in the ability, or not ability in the
Text, the creature type.
text. Specifically, not the ability.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not a fan of this guy. Maybe if
Right.
you need a critical mass of things that'll mill 3,
I don't think you ever
specifically,
do, especially
right?
when
Because
you
there's
could just.
instances of sorceries that mill more.
Yeah. All right. Next one up is Burrowing Razorman, which is a 4/2 beast for 3. 2 and a green, says when it dies, mill 4 cards. I think the first line of text in this flavor text is the best description of this card that could be said. That's
Um,
odd.
mhm.
This is
See,
a weird card. It's a very strange card. I don't think it's
I
great. I don't think it's
really
bad.
I miss when milling yourself was counted as a downside.
Right?
Because right here, 3 mana 4/2, we have those.
Yeah.
Um, 3 mana 4/2 dies does something. I don't think we do. Um, and so milling 4 cards is really treated as a neutral in this. But when it was treated as a negative, it could have been 4/3. Just like nudged it up a little bit.
Yeah, this needs something that's not just mill 4. This is not a good card. It's interesting to me that this can be recommissioned or unearthed. This is a
Can be
big boy to
understood.
get unearthed or recommissioned.
Oh yeah,
Um,
5/3 to get him right back out.
yeah,
Nice.
especially
Um,
because it kind of like fuels the recommissions and unearths. So like maybe there's like an Abzan like junk deck that just runs like this and the 4/4 for 3 that when you cast it you have to tap 2 extra things. Um,
that one would be solid. See, that's a drawback.
yeah, but maybe something along those lines where you're just like playing huge 3 drops with unearths and recommissions out of the graveyard, and you've got like grizzly salvages to get your recommissions and start your graveyard fuel. I don't know, that seems promising to me, and I don't think we have a critical mass of like 3-drop huge cards. We have like Biograph and we have the new 4/4, but that's about it. Um,
Yeah. I mean, there's not really a lot that'll fill your grave.
yep. So,
Um,
um, otherwise, pretty
anyways,
unimpressive.
the
All
next
right,
one.
next up is Cytonal Stalwart. It's an elf druid soldier. It's a 1/1 for 1 green, and it says tap an untapped artifact creature you control. Add 1 mana of any color. I'm sure you would draw the same comparison I did, but is there any reason that you can think of to play this over a Jaspera Sentinel? Because that card
There,
exists in this format, is played in Elves, is played in Walls, and this does exactly the same thing for the same mana cost, but it has less toughness, it doesn't have reach, and the only relevant creature type on it is Elf in both cases, so the Druid and Soldier doesn't actually matter here.
um, yeah, there's not really a world in which you play this over that guy. Um, I don't think there's a world you played over the 0/3 that does the same thing that I play in Walls either. Because this doesn't have Defender on it.
Yeah.
Like this thing just seems to be lacking a keyword of any kind to find a real home.
Yeah, and I don't think you ever need more than 4 Jaspera Sentinels because you have Birchlore Rangers. So I just don't think this has a home anywhere.
Yep, I agree.
All right. Next up is Epic Confrontation. This is a reprint, so we're gonna skip it. Next up is Fog of War, which is a 3 mana instant for 2 and a green. You get gain 1 life for each creature on the battlefield, and then prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn by creatures with power 3 or less. This is an interesting adaptation of Fog, mixed with a little bit of like a Weather the Storm sort of thing, where you're gaining life but also fogging, but you're not fogging everything. Not sure if this makes the cut in Turbo Fog, regardless of it having the titular name. I think that Moment's Peace and Tangle still kind of reign supreme because each of those gives you 2 turns per card, which is pretty relevant as far as like density goes for repeatable effects. You really need to maximize both of those cards and the number of resources that they kind of give you with each cast. I don't know that this does that specifically because power 3 or less isn't very many. It sets you up for situations in which like you want it to be a fog and it isn't. It's also like not that much life that you're going to gain a lot of the time unless you're against very specific matchups. And in both those matchups for like elves and goblins, I think that most of the time, like just a true fog is better. I think, yeah, there's like one deck where this card seems absolute busted, which is Koldatha Red. You cast this against a Koldatha Red, and it's pretty much GG, right? You're going to gain like 7 to 8 life and then also fog their turn. That's certainly worth two turns in a single cast. But yeah, I think largely this card is slightly overshadowed by the other options. We have Weather the Storm, we have Tangle, we have Moment's Peace. And I don't think this card is better than any of them. And I don't think that the power 3 or less is worth the sacrifice for versatility. I think that this would need to be a true fog. It would need to just read, gain 1 life for each creature on the field, and then prevent all combat damage this turn. And that would give you some flexibility in the Turbofog deck to run it. This is like a 2 of, maybe over like a Singleton Weather and like one of your Moments Pieces or something. So you have like an in-between where it's part Weather the Storm, part Fog. But largely I think this is not very good for Constructed. It's certainly not going to be played in the cube, and I don't even think I play this in most of my limited pools if I open it.
Yeah. Fogs haven't really been too great for me playing them in limited. Now, because it is conditional and you can set up a good turn with it, if your opponent overextends, you can get a really good turn off. You could probably win off of that. But it does require your opponent misplaying, and that's why I don't usually like fogs.
So I actually did watch an absolute blowout with this in the pre-release, which was pretty worth noting. It's not necessarily that just when your opponent misplays. Sometimes it's when they play correctly. I watched my opponent attack with his like game-breaking bomb into a board that could multi-block it to trade that was profitable for the opponent, where he would only lose like 1 creature if he triple blocked it, but it would trade 1 creature for the bomb. Mm-hmm. In which case I watched the opponent attack in knowing that it was a profitable trade for the opponent, let him triple block it, and then proceed to Fog of War to kill like 2 of the dudes, and then also gain some life and not lose his bomb, which was an absolute blowout. But yeah, very short of like very, very narrow circumstances, I think this is largely bad. It's not even good art.
Right? You can't hardly even see what's going on. There's all this.
Yeah, some fog.
Oh.
They did the thing. They did the thing. All right. What's up next? Gaia's Gift. 2 mana, says instant. For a colorless and a green, you get put a 1/1 counter on target creature. It gains reach, trample, hexproof, and indestructible. Boy, is that keyword soup. And keyword soup is some good soup. I'm a big fan of keyword soup, but 2 mana is a lot.
It's some hearty soup.
It's some soup that's like hard to sell. 2 mana is a lot. I don't know how much I'm willing to pay for some keyword soup, and I don't know if 2 mana seems like, maybe 1 too much. So, interesting question, right? So we're looking at this. You get a 1/1 counter and you get 4 keywords. Obviously, that's like 2 keywords per mana, which is about what we've seen on cards like this, right? We've seen like 1/1 counter indestructible, 1/1 counter hexproof, that kind of stuff to give you 2 of the 5 things on this card for 1 mana. Let's say that their intention was to power creep, right? Because in like Unexpected Fangs, for instance, is 2 mana, get a 1/1 counter, and then get lifelink and lifelink counter, right? So it gets permanent lifelink, and Death Touch, or is that the other one? It's just lifelink, right?
The other one's +2/+1 lifelink draw card.
No, I mean there's another combat trick that gives lifelink and Death Touch. I think this just gives lifelink.
Yeah, that one costs 2, I think. It's colorless and a black.
Yep. Okay, so Let's just assume they wanted to power creep this and give us an extra keyword for free on our 1 mana cantrip, right? So, or our 1 mana combat trick. So, which 2 keywords, right? 2 of the 4. If you could slim this down and make it a 1 mana combat trick that said 1/1 counter and it gets 2 of these 4 keywords, which 2 would you want on it for it to be good?
Probably reach indestructible.
Really?
Yeah, so I'm putting a counter on something I'm surprised blocking. I want it to not die, and I want it to definitely block.
So yeah, I want it to be the other way. I want indestructible trample.
Okay.
Because, and this is my rationale, if they are removing the creature, right? If this is a combat trick that you want to whiff like a counterspell, or not a counterspell, a removal spell, it means that it can already do something they don't want it to do, which means likely it is a creature that can already block the thing you're trying to block. So the indestructible or the argument for giving it reach so that it can block a new thing is largely redundant, I think, because most of the time if they're trying to kill it, and you don't really want to burn your combat tricks before they try to kill it, it's because it can already block the thing that they want to attack with, right? So I don't think it needs reach. But indestructible, I agree, is better than hexproof in this case. Let them target it. The majority of the time, indestructible is going to whiff the removal spell of their choice, regardless. Although there is an argument for hexproof. I like indestructible because then it allows you to continue blocking without the risk of losing the creature, even after they've whiffed the counterspell or the removal spell. But I like trample for one very specific reason, and it's that it gives this combat application angle for aggressive, so that you don't have to use it on the defensive. You can be proactive with this card if you want to. And it allows you to do some interesting swings, because most times you don't want to spend your combat trick on your creature proactively for fear that they will remove your creature. But most of the time that you want to use something to give your dude indestructible to like suicide in to force a lethal, you're casting it on something that would likely die in combat anyway. So if they then remove it with a removal spell to whiff, you're not really losing that much, right? Like your ideal target for this type of thing, if you want to get in with it, is like, an X1 or like an X2, and you want to give it trample and then like force damage over the top with it, and then the indestructible is just gravy because you also don't lose the creature. I don't think the indestructible is super necessary. Yeah, I don't know. As is, this card is not playable. 2 mana is not an acceptable mana cost for a combat trick in Pauper. I mean, there is exactly Unexpected Fangs, and that's just because it gives lifelink indefinitely. If this was like gains a trample counter, I would be way more on board, right?
I like the reach. Granted, it does, like you said, it gives you the opportunity to block something new, but they weren't probably trying to kill it anyways, so it kind of just eats the card from their hand when they kill a creature in response. Otherwise, this is a gotcha kind of a thing. I don't think the 1/1 is enough to use it on the aggressive.
True. I totally understand that the 1/1 is not a big enough pump to make this an aggressive card, but I like that it gives an aggressive keyword so that you do have a little bit of flexibility. Most cards like this will give you an aggressive stat pump and a defensive keyword, right? And generally speaking, the defensive keyword is more powerful than the offensive stat pump, so it's not worth it to use it proactively. In this case, I like that the 1/1 counter is a neutral stat pump because it is both good on offense and defense to get your creature permanently 1 bigger, right? It's not a 1-turn swing like most of these type of spells. So because the stat pump is a neutral quality, I would like to have an offensive quality and a defensive quality in the keyword selection. That way you have an application for both sides of the versatility. you have a neutral stat bump, and you have a relevant keyword on defense and a relevant keyword on offense. And I think the trample is probably the keyword of choice there, just because the 1/1 counter, you're right, is not a big enough stat bump to be used aggressively. But the trample is an important enough keyword to use aggressively because you don't have to rely on the 1/1 being a stat bump. You're not going to put this on your 2/2 and try to attack for 5 with it. You're going to put this on your 6/6 and just use it to give him trample, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much the idea there.
Yep. All right. Let's see what's next. Giant growth. We're just gonna skip this. Nice reprint. Cool artwork. Not needed. Next up is Gnarl Root Pallbearer, which is a 5/5 Druid. A 5/5 Treefolk Druid for 6. 4 and a green gets you trample, and when it enters the battlefield, target creature gets XX until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures in your graveyard. You know, I want this card to replace the Domyu green costs 1 less for each type of land you control. If this was 5 colorless and a green, right, and it was 5/5, and it didn't have trample, and it just said enters the battlefield, target creature gets XX, where X is the number of lands you control, and it still had the domain cost reduction on it.
Wait, domain cost reduction specifically, or another cost reduction?
No, so it still had the domain cost reduction. So like you still could make this cost 1 if you went the extra mile, right? Which was one of my big problems with the original version, is it cannot cost 1 even if you have full domain, which I hated. And then this was a 5/5. It didn't have trample, but it ETB'd and it gave XX for the number of lands you control. So we double down on the domain idea, but it doesn't cap at 5. I would be down with this card. As is, 5/5 trample with +X attached to it with ETB is certainly powerful, and it's probably pretty good and limited. But in Pauper constructed, this is like entirely unplayable. You're never casting this for 6 mana, and its XX ability already gets hit by all the graveyard hate that's in every sideboard already. You're never building a deck around this card because it's going to get hit by too much hate. This card is untouchable outside of limited. But I think that this idea was more on track with what the Dom U cost reduction Treefolk should have been than what the Dom U Treefolk ended up being.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, they both kind of seem like misses, don't they?
Yep. All right, let's scooter along to Hoarding Recluse, which is a 2/3 for 4, 3 and a green for a spider, and it gets you reach and death touch. And when it dies, you put up to 1 target card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. This is largely a miss for me. I mean, first off, it's a 2/3 for 4, which is like abysmal on vanilla rate, right? Reach and death touch is a great combination, but not on a 4-drop, right? You're already getting beat down by the 2/2 flyers long before this thing comes down. And the dice ability is just not very good in Pauper. Like I could see like a very, very slim reason to play this in like Eggstron, where they need a way to like recycle a specific card, not an artifact card, because it's just any card from the graveyard. But yeah, you almost never want to give your opponent a card back just to get it out of their graveyard. You'd much rather just exile their graveyard. This is a miss for me. I don't think this is very good.
Yeah, I mean, gone are the days of Giant Spider, but this is not much
This
more
isn't even
playable.
close to Giant Spider.
No joke though, if this had a more points in its toughness, if this was like a 1/5 for 4, this card would be insane.
I think this card would be reasonable as a 2/3 for 3. If this was a 2/3 reach death touch, when it dies, like, instead of put target card from any graveyard on bottom, if it was like a reclaim where it would put a card from your graveyard on top, I would be interested in this card. But yeah, as it stands, this is largely a miss.
Yeah, so what you described is more in line with current Pauper power level, in the way that you could just put a draw spell on top of your library again, and just keep going further afterwards. But
yep. Yeah, bottom's just not the place you want it to be. Let's see. Next up is perimeter control.
Unless you're playing Grim Grin in EDH.
Yeah, that doesn't exist in Pauper. Let's see. Yeah, perimeter patrol is next. It's a 3/3 for 3 human soldier for a green and 2 colorless. You get whenever an artifact enters the battlefield, it gets 1/0. Oh, so this is the 3-drop version of the 2 mana one in white that we were trying to figure out some obscene combos with. I think this is substantially worse at 3, and it doesn't even get vigilance. Like, you'd think that like the 3-drop version would have trample or something, you know?
Yeah, but I've thought that more expensive cards were supposed to be better before, and I've been burned by that.
I mean, I would be okay if this was a 2/2 for 3 with trample and the same ability, right? But we have a 2/2 for 2 with vigilance in the exact same text box, and we have a 3/3 for 3 with the text box with no extra keyword. This just seems like a pure downshift in its own set. Yeah, not sold on this one. I think the 2-drop is way more playable, and it's in a better color for artifact synergy.
Yeah, if they wanted to make this different without a keyword and make it worth it, enters or leaves.
You know what also would have been an interesting one is if they had just overstatted this. So if this had been like a 5/3, but it only untapped when an artifact entered the battlefield.
Oh yeah.
You could have given us, artifact ETB as, another thing, and just overstatted this as like a green vanilla fatty, like a green nettle sentinel but for artifacts,
Or like a green juggernaut.
Or like what was it? Like a steel fin whale or whatever it was, right? Only untaps when an artifact ETBs. But overstat this, right? Make it like a 5/4 or something. I would have been way more into that.
Yeah, just give it keyword. It's green.
Yeah. All right. Next up is Shoot Down, which is a sorcery for 3 and a green. God, this better be good. Exile an artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. Oh, never mind. It's not good. This needed to cost 2 to be playable. Like, this is way too much mana for a sorcery. If this was going to be a sorcery, it needed to cost 2, and it might have been considerable at 3 for an instant just because it exiles. But, man, at 4 mana with a single target at sorcery speed, this card is so far from playable.
Sorry, I read all the rest of the card, but you said sorcery, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, I said sorcery and 4 mana. We've seen literally this same effect at 2 with cycling at instant.
Yeah.
Except it wasn't exile, it was destroy. So I understand that exile is important here, but it's not 2 generic mana important, and it's a sorcery. Why? This is horrible. And it has such cool art. This is such a pretty foil. Dude, that explosion with the green streak from the arrow looks fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I wish this was a good card.
I like how it's a flying artifact as well. There's no way you could have made it an enchantment at the same time, but,
I mean, they could have. It just would have needed to be set in Neo.
I don't think there is an artifact enchantment, or an artifact and an enchantment that exists.
Crab? Is Crab an enchantment?
No, Crab's only an artifact.
Just an artifact creature.
Yeah, those are 2 as far as I can tell, exclusive typings, just for like
Well,
the
I
whole
just like because
science versus magic thing.
we haven't seen very many like non-land, non-enchantments that have channel, so I thought maybe
Hmm.
permanents. Obviously, we've seen spells with channel and some creatures with
Hmm.
channel, but most of them have subtypes. So I was thinking that maybe an artifact creature with channel would have been typed into enchantment, but nope.
Yeah.
Um,
But anyways, going back to this card, it is just a strictly worse Broken Wings.
yep.
Which is this, but destroy
Mm-hmm.
at 3,
Yep.
no cycle. And then there's another card which is uh, worse than all of that, that I think this took inspiration from. It's called Return to the Earth, which is literally has the same text as this card,
Mm-hmm.
but it says destroy at the start,
Yeah, and
and
then
it's
there's also what was it? Back to Nature, I think, is the one with cycling.
Return to Nature. It's so much better.
Yeah.
Doesn't have cycling, but it hits a card in the graveyard, and it doesn't hit a creature with flying.
I thought there was. Oh, maybe it is Return to Nature. It's just the destroy an artifact, an enchantment, or exile a card. But there is one with cycling. I don't remember what it was called. Wilt? Is it Wilt? Destroy target artifact or enchantment with like
Yes,
cycling, and
Wilt
it's
has
2 mana
cycling.
instant.
Is Wilt 2 or is it 3?
It might be 3. It's 2 to cycle, right?
I agree. It is 2 to, yeah, it's 2 to play, 2 to cycle.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this one was
And it's just artifact or
Ikoria.
enchantment, right? That doesn't have any weird third option.
Yeah, there's no
Okay.
expression
Third
on that
option
card.
is the cycle.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Let's see. What's up next? Tanos' Tinkering. 3 and a green on an instant gets put 2/1/1 counters on target artifact, creature, or land you control. Untap that permanent. If it isn't a creature, it becomes a 0/0 creature in addition to its other types. So we get another one of these animate spells. We've seen a lot of these recently since Kenku Artificer. We saw the 4 mana enchantment from this set. Now we get an instant that provides a permanent animation similar to Kenku, where it gives 1/1 counters and animates permanently. But it untaps it, and it's an instant speed activation. Do you see anyone casting this on bridges? Because I just don't know. I think that if you're gonna do it, you're almost certainly just gonna do it on bridges, right? Like you're never casting this as a 4 mana put 2/1/1 counters on tap your creature. You're almost always gonna animate something with this at instant speed as a surprise blocker, right?
Yeah.
But like, are you ever gonna do it on anything but a bridge? I don't think this is good at 4 mana.
I would say no. You're not putting this on anything but a bridge because it doesn't give any keywords, and bridges are the only thing that has one.
Yeah.
Like there's no lands with flash,
Yeah.
or reach. That'd be
Yeah.
funny if there was just a forest, just reach. But this doesn't do enough for that. You're never playing this on a naked land.
Yeah.
I would 100% put this on like if I drew this off the top of my deck. First off, I'd question how it got in there. But secondly, I would only cast it on something that's already been animated.
Yeah,
Like,
which begs the question, like, why does this cost 4 mana? Like, if this was like 3 mana, put 2/1/1 counters on target creature, you can target creature, artifact, or land you control, and untap that permanent,
mm,
and then animate
it's
it. Like, I would
yeah.
consider it at 3. I'm definitely not thinking about it at 4.
I mean, it's like a really bad manifest or a reverse manifest.
Yeah. Yeah.
It.
That's okay. We don't have
No,
to think too bad. This
yeah.
card is not going to be played, so we don't have to worry about it.
Mhm.
What's up next? Tamakul Honor Guard is a 3/1 human soldier for 2, colorless and a green. It says Ward 2. That's it. I'm largely in favor of this card. I know that I just said something about Blade of the Sixth Pride and these 3/1s that we have, but this is a 2-drop 3/1 with a little bit of protection. It's not quite, Sylvala Ledgewalker, but it does have ward, which means you're a little safer to like run out that Rancor on it on turn 3. You're safer to, commit to like a Moldervine Cloak or an Elephant Guide out of Mono Green Stompy. I think of the green cards we've seen thus far, and we've seen almost all of them, I think this is the only one that truly has a shot at getting play in constructed Pauper. And I think if it does, it would be in Mono Green Stompy. And I think that it's like specifically for the curve of being able to like throw an Elephant Guide on this with impunity on turn 3. Or not impunity, but close to impunity on turn 3. That's really the only case I can make for it, though. Like, it's not great. I just think that if any of these green cards has a chance, it's this guy.
Yeah, I agree. There's not really too many hexproof or not shroud, but hexproof green or blue creatures you want to play. This guy he's really got size on his side, so he can actually give you a turn in boggles, like get you 1 turn closer to killing them. But I mean, green has actually been less exciting than the other colors here. Yeah, I think this is the one that has the most possibility behind him.
Yeah, agreed. Green definitely seems like the most lackluster of this of the common set for sure. Let's see if the last card of green has anything to say about that. Last up is Wasteful Harvest. It is a 3-mana instant for 2 and a green. You get mill 5 cards. You may put a permanent card from among the cards milled this way into your hand. I don't hate Grizzly Salvage. But this is a 3-mana Grizzly Salvage, but it gets any permanent, not just a creature or land.
It's also from among them.
Yeah. I really, I've hated that text on literally every card it's been on. Stop it. Stop putting among the cards milled. Why? Why is a 3-mana instant when we've had 2-mana instants that do exactly the same thing but aren't restricted to cards milled among them?
Mm-hmm. Again, this is another one of those Warhammer looking ones, isn't it?
Well, okay, so I will say, one, yes. I will say that Grizzly Salvage does restrict you to one of the cards revealed. So you do have to pick a creature or a land from among the 5 and then put the rest into your graveyard. It just doesn't put them into your graveyard first. So this is on par with Grizzly Salvage. It gets any permanent instead of just a creature or land. It is an instant. It's just a 3-mana instant instead of a 2-mana instant, but it's only in 1 color. So I've changed my mind. I think this card is good. Because I have seen Grizzly Salvage get play, and if Grizzly Salvage can see play, this card can too. This card, I think, is probably better than Grizzly Salvage in that it's not restricted to creature or land only, and it's a singleton color. Instant means that the difference between 2 and 3 really isn't that much, because as long as you have the ability to leave mana open, the ability to leave 2 mana open versus the ability to leave 3 mana open is not a massive jump. Obviously, it is a jump, but it's not a huge jump. And being able to just look at 5 cards, pick one of them, put it in your hand, and then put the rest in the graveyard isn't bad. I don't know. I think this might be... I think there's applications for this card. I don't think any of these green cards are crazy playable, at least not easily identifiable as crazy playable, right? You're not... there is no Tolarian Terror here. You're not looking at this going, that's going to be played. None of these cards say that to me. But I think the last 2, the Honor Guard and this, are probably the closest to getting played in something that exists right now. The Honor Guard is like a very close, mono green stompy Ledgewalker type parallel with some more power. I don't know how relevant that is in stompy. I imagine not very relevant, considering Ledgewalker just outright can't be targeted, and Honor Guard can. So, you know, maybe Wasteful Harvest ends up being the most playable green card. I don't know. I think the parallel to Grisly Salvage is close enough that cutting black out of the mana cost, keeping it an instant, and making it any permanent instead of just a creature or land is worth at least remembering this card is around. That does wrap up the green cards for Brothers War. Make sure you drop a comment down below for the algorithm. It really does improve the viewage and the ability to find the videos. So I really do appreciate all you guys dropping the hashtag algorithm games in the comments down below. It really does help the channel grow. Like usual, guys, if you've gotten to the end of the video, please consider subscribing. It really does help. And like the video if you haven't already. Share it with some friends that need some help with their limited and card evaluations so that they can start to learn about the game and how to break these cards down. As usual, guys, goodbye forever unless I see you next time, and keep your eyes out for the top 5 video coming soon. It's going to include a giveaway, and the next video out is going to be the final video of the Brothers War breakdown, which is the artifacts and lands section. So I will see you there. Peace.